Thank you everyone for joining. We are so excited to share this topic with all of you. I know I have had a lot of lessons learned in my life on my leadership journey. Some were great and some were not so amazing, and you'll get to hear those today. Um, but because of all of that and the equation and where we are, we thought this would be a super fun topic to bring up and help people plan to overcome some of those hurdles. So before I go too far, you should have received an email from me about 2 hours ago with an Excel workbook. If you did not, go ahead and put your email in the chat and Julie will get that to you ASAP.
Yep. Any questions you have in chat today, chat, QA, whatever you'd like, send them over. And I am monitoring them while Jen is speaking.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And we hope to make this as interactive as possible. Add thoughts, comments, lessons that you've learned, lessons that you didn't love learning. Feel free to add it. We love to see what people have to contribute. So who are we at JointPivot? Well, Julie and I have had the privilege of knowing each other both professionally and personally, and then professionally again, for almost the last 10 years and at 4 separate companies. We share the love of golf and Ann Arbor, possibly other Big Ten schools, and family. I mean, it's truth. So we decided to jump into our own business last fall. I think the number one reason is because we love what we do. We love helping people. We love seeing light bulbs go off. We love connecting dots, seeing results, and not stopping till we achieve them. We also appreciate being able to take our past, everything from strategic planning, project management, HR, operations, manufacturing, continuous improvement, change management, and more, to mix together and create personalized solutions for companies and groups. So we both have a diverse background in both industry and function, and we've had the chance to actually have direct ownership of all of those items that I just mentioned. And again, we create solutions, we design them to get to the root cause of any issue. We can use our training or experience so we can deliver creative plans using us or training your people and your teams and employees. So what are we going to talk about today? So we're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of being a leader. Keep in mind that the topic of leadership could take us hours, days, years to come through. I mean, there's so much out there.
And you will never master it.
No, it's a continuous journey. It's a long roadmap to the end. And we wanted to pick something that anyone can use. So what we talk about today is applicable to any role. You don't have to be a people leader or manager. You can be an individual contributor, any industry, just to help people improve. And actually, salespeople, plant floor, can have some huge wins with this strategy that we're going to be talking about. I do have some stories to share. They are, I wouldn't say embarrassing. They definitely helped me get where I am. So again, please feel free to use the chat feature to add something and give your own ideas. So is leadership a noun, an adjective, or a verb? And collecting all of our past content, putting it into the slide, there's a lot of different definitions that we've had in our past, right? It's an action of leading a group. It's an art of motivating. So that leads us to the fact that this is a little bit art and a little bit science to being a leader. We're working towards a common goal. There's a process, right? I love a good process because it can help us achieve certain tasks along the way. And overall, we're influencing people, right? We don't want to use our power or our titles to influence. We want to actually use our actions and behaviors and words to help out. So poll number 1 is just a quick question. Let's see what people are thinking out there. Can anyone be a leader? Interesting. So a small mix. Anyone can be a leader, yes and no. I love the different points of view. These are anonymous, so we don't know what you're selecting. Do you want to go ahead and end it, Julie?
You got it. I'll share the results here. Wow.
Very cool. And, there's no right or wrong, right? We just want to see where people's minds are at. Are you bored with it? Can you learn it? Different situations call for different types of leaders, actually, right? Some people are far more well rounded and can step up in any scenario, and others are not. People can be leaders in different ways, obviously, at home, at work, at outside organizations, but it's also okay to be a follower, right? And good leaders know when to follow. Better yet, they hire good people so they can make leadership less exhausting for them, knowing that they can have people step up in certain arenas and worlds.
I heard a fun thing, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Jen, when we were talking about leadership. And this person across from me said, "You're a leader anytime you open your mouth."
Huh.
And I was like, what a profound thought. And it stuck with me because I was like, yeah, I mean, like pretty much every time you're opening your mouth, you're essentially trying to lead people one way or another. It might not be in the formal sense,
Right.
but you're usually trying to persuade or educate or help, or all of that is small components of leadership.
I will pause before I say anything ever again. Oh, that's a good one. I have to add that after the next slide because I think
Yeah.
it's good. So what does good look like? It's definitely not limited to the items below. Feel free to add, again, additional comments in the chat about what good looks like to you. Some key ones that stick out to me are self-aware, and that kind of plays into exactly what Julie just said, right? Knowing that what I'm about to say is going to impact people in one way or another. Maybe I should think first. How are my nonverbal behaviors coming off to people? How consistent am I,
Hmm.
right? Sometimes it's very hard to be consistent when you're a people leader, especially when someone gets under your skin, right? Or someone on another team just rubs you the wrong way. How can you be mature in those situations and continue to treat people consistently? Right? And the more consistency that you can demonstrate, the more people are going to want to follow, right? The more authentic you can be. It's huge to have that. And we all know that we've been around people who aren't authentic, and that's not fun, right? And you
Hmm.
kind of leave begrudgingly and might think something about that individual. So when you are leading people, even if they're not your favorite people, right, you still have to have an authentic relationship with them. And then developing others, right? Caring about the people that you lead and maybe not lead, but work with, to develop them, maybe so they can be promoted and move on in their career. It could be within your company, your department, or possibly at another company. And someone once said this to me, that their overall goal in leadership was to export talent. And I'm like,
Hmm.
that's fascinating, right? Because that means that this person wants to develop. They want people to look back at them as a leader and be like, man, they know how to create people. They know how to, instill values and behaviors that exude leadership in maybe different situations. And even if the person does leave the company to go take on maybe some sort of leadership role, right? You should be proud, right?
Hmm.
That's your person. You help them get there. And while it stinks to have talent leave, right, we should be proud for them and excited for what they've accomplished because it reflects back on you as an individual.
Absolutely. We had a chat here from Amanda. She's got some great insight on this for from her experiences in leadership roles, motivating others to their fullest potential towards a common goal is the hardest but yet most rewarding part of leadership.
Hmm.
100%.
Yep. Yep.
Great comment, Amanda.
So, and when it's bad, it can be terrible, right? And the list is endless. I'd love to see some additional comments from when it's bad. And we did a culture training yesterday talking about how culture can work. And these are just killers, right? It's not fun. It's not fun to come to work to a micromanager. I've found in past engagements where I was coaching an executive at a company, and he had no clue, zero self awareness in how he came off. And one day he was late to one of our trainings with his team. He probably had, I don't know, 50 some people on his team, all the way from entry level, to some managers and directors. He comes in late, he throws his keys on the table, and we're all kind of staring at him because he's disrupted us. And he's like, sorry, I'm late. I had to drop the Land Rover off at the dealership, and then my wife had to come pick me up, and then I had to take her home and get the Mercedes, and it's just chaos, and I'm late. And my
Hmm.
jaw almost dropped because I'm like, first of all, you just disrupted us. Second of all, please, like, I don't think he realized how boastful he was coming off to his team. And I'm sure they were like, oh, that's nice. No, you make a ton of money and you pay me peanuts. I'm glad you can have two fancy cars at home. Being aware of your surroundings and who you're with. Now, if he wants to talk like that with his counterparts, then by golly, right? Go to
Hmm.
town. But again, recognize who you're with. Um, Another role that I had, um, I honestly thought I was going to be fired every single day. I don't know how I lasted under this individual. And my mom was worried. She was like, "All right, is there, you just you have a job today?"
Poor
And
Nancy.
it, it was painful. But this man just instilled fear. I mean, that was his leadership style, just straight up fear. He was always afraid that I was going to be talking to people outside of his department and telling about what he was doing and how things were going, and that his empire and moat that he built up will come, crashing down,
Hmm.
all because of me. When in reality, I was terrified. Are you kidding? I'm not going to share anything about this department to anyone else for fear of it coming back to me. So it was not fun. Um, if you ever want more stories on that, please feel free to call. The list is endless. I could probably write a book.
Hmm.
So when it's bad, and we don't want that to happen.
Exactly. Jen, I asked a couple questions in chat here on
Cool.
what the least favorite culture killers are. And I'd put down mine was not walking the walk and not being authentic. Fear-based management, the biggest and most destructive killer. Yep, I agree with that, Katie. Having an absent leader without a team focus. Absolutely, Stephen. These are all things that just sink you right down.
Yes, gives me a stomach ache. So poll number 2. Now let's be honest. Have any of you ever demonstrated the not so good attributes?
All right, let me get poll number 2 going here.
My answer is going to would be a yes.
I clicked it, Jen, so we can vote on it.
Can I?
I think you should be able to. Oh, wait, because we're hosts, not panelists. I was just going to raise my hand and just be like, yep, yesterday, probably today already.
Yep. But it's key, right? To be a good leader. What did I do today? How did I react? And our activity today is going to help us kind of walk through that. You want to go ahead and
Mhm.
end that?
You got it. I'll
So
share you
cool.
the
So,
results.
yep, maybe a little, absolutely. And no, right? Fantastic. Like, it'd be cool to reach out and talk to us, because I'd love to find out, like, what have you learned? Who have you watched and observed to figure out what's working and how to exude that? So that's fantastic. Um, and then truth, just to level set, right? Leadership is a 24/7 job, 365 days a year. And that plays into what Julie said, right? Anytime you open your mouth and what comes out, you're leading. It is exhausting, it's tiring. Um, you know, we're leading constantly in our lives, at work, at home. Sometimes we can never turn it off. And so today we want to leave you with a refreshed view and hopefully some new thoughts on both what it means, but how to tackle it and make it less exhausting.
Hmm.
And so just some quick strategies, how to make it less stressful, understanding your goals, right? So gosh, Stephen, if you have an absent leader, I'm not quite sure how you will understand your goals. But if you don't know how, if you know what it is, but you don't know how to get there, work backwards. Like, think about planning a trip to Disney World. Not today, not tomorrow, because it's not open and who knows when it will open. But you're planning stops along the way. If you've got kids or animals, you're going to plan stops for food and for bathroom. You're going to have snacks and treats. You're probably going to plant some verbal recognition just to keep your family motivated that yes, it is a 20-hour drive, but you know what, we can make it and we'll get through it. Maybe some suckers and some random treats. You're going to have your iPads and chargers, right? You're planning this checklist so you can get to the goal at Disney World and be sane and still alive, right? The same thing with
Absolutely.
planning to get anything done in your world, right? What are you going to have to do as a leader to get there? Daily, weekly, monthly, removing ambiguity. This sounds silly, but pick out your clothes at night, right? Make sure that your clothes, especially if you have something to go to and you actually have to put pants on that fit, and your shirts are ironed because you haven't worn them in over 4 months. Pick it out at night to make sure it's good so you don't have to deal with the headache tomorrow. Um, Picking up, making your lunch, right? Small things that just add a little bit of chaos. I know when I have to get to my daughter to daycare because I have to be somewhere on time, the night before, I'm prepping her. Okay, Lauren, I'm going to wake you up. It's going to be earlier than normal. Let's get your clothes out. Please, please, please put them on before you come downstairs. And I'm walking her through what that routine is going to be. And then if she wakes up and all goes awry, I bring her back to what we talked about and agreed to. And she knows she wants to help me. It's a symbiotic relationship. We have to help each other out to stay sane.
I love that girl. She's me.
She's phenomenal in many ways. And then we've got, do it, delegate it, and delete it, and defer it. So the 4Ds. This often refers to your inbox, but it can also refer to your task list, right? Looking at things that you have to do. What do I actually have to do versus maybe delegating to a team member? Better yet, maybe it's not a team member, maybe it's someone in another function, because it's not even your role to get this done, right? Sometimes if we know that we're supposed to be doing things, we do it, and then our list just piles up. But in reality, can someone else manage it? And then the most challenging sometimes is delete it, right? Maybe it's just not going to happen, or doesn't need to happen. Roles, responsibilities, competencies, and behaviors. I have to say, from true experience and working with other companies and functions on this, if you can define roles and responsibilities, expectations from hard skills and soft skills that pertain to people's roles, and align them to a goal, your job as a leader, the exhaustion just came down, right? You can't, don't call me crazy, call me afterwards. We'll walk you through how it works. But you've set up expectations for your team of what to do and how to do things, right? And you can come from all sides to help reinforce because you've laid the groundwork, right? And something you'll see with all of these, it requires planning, right? We're planning to make our lives easier, but also more productive. And then the last one, which we will get into a little more, is prepping for any situation. So ensuring professionalism, right, and a positive outcome. So we said that leadership can be a little bit of art and a little bit of science. How can we take things and make it a little bit more science so we know all of our inputs, help that output, and have predictable outcomes? So again, you should have received the Excel workbook. Yes, there were 2 typos in it. So kudos to the people who found it first. I'm embarrassed, but it happens.
Shoot, and I proofed it, but as you all know, I'm an engineer. They don't teach me spelling in engineering school. No shame.
It happens, right? There are worse things that could go wrong. So we created a form, a template to help you plan. Why do we love forms? Well, gosh, it's documented, number one, right? The key is, wait, we think more when we have to write things down. It's repeatable, right? I can do this over and over for a couple different scenarios at different times in my life, and maybe different instances or when I change jobs or roles. It's visual, right? So we can see it. And sometimes that helps us understand and actually follow a little more. It can help hold you accountable, right? If you fill this out and review it with your partner or someone who sits across from you or your leader at work, to help hold you accountable to actually respond to certain scenarios in a certain way. And overall, it's a process. We love a good process. It forces us to ask questions. Number one, even though we might think we already know the answer, we should still ask it. And it helps kind of, helps you look under stones that you might not have peeked under if you just assumed you could handle the situation. So forms are fun, right? I love them. So this form, again, was created with the intent of having you deal with the challenging or often forgotten rewarding part of your job. So first, you're going to brainstorm a scenario that could have been a huge, you handled it terribly and you'd like to go back and do it again. Maybe it's a situation that was challenging, but you observed someone who did something different and you want to figure out how you would plan and attack that situation. And then, of course, recognition, right? We don't give enough recognition in our lives. So how can we plan and be ready with words for someone who needs to be motivated and reinforce all that good behavior? We ask, why is this a problem, right? Let's understand the magnitude of this issue to help us prioritize where it falls in regards to creating a solution or helping out with someone. Someone might come to you and say, oh my gosh, this sky's falling. And then you ask and you're like, it's really not following, right? It's a good question to ask, especially when someone is coming to you with a problem.
It's important too on that one, because I know I do that myself, where For me, I'm going to work through everything I can on my own to solve a problem so that if I actually do go to my leader, it's because I've exhausted every other option. So I'm not coming to you because the sky is falling, or I'm coming to you because the sky is falling. And it's hard when you're a leader if you've got one person who's like, I'm going to come to you with every little thing. And then on the opposite end, you've got somebody who's only coming to you for the major things. It's
Mhm.
hard to switch your mind around that way. And this is just a great way, this the scenario for the problem, to really kind of level set if you've got those two polar opposites that happen to be on the same team.
Absolutely. And most of the time, your team is made up of different personalities and different experiences. And sometimes you inherit people who have maybe the culture of the company that have been there a long time, right?
Hmm.
So, how do you influence them in a positive way? Again, by planning through these scenarios. I went too fast. First, I need to talk about number 3. History has shown what is your normal reaction. So, say the sky is falling or something bad happens. Are you like me? And Julie knows exactly what I'm talking about. My face is going to tell a story, whether I like it or not. I could probably Botox the whole thing and I'd still be able to creep through some sort of eyebrow raise or a frown or something. People watch my face in meetings to see how I'm going to react, whether it's comical or maybe not so good. Um, are you crossing your arms? Are you sitting back? Are you breathing heavy, right? What are you doing um, in this scenario that we want to counterbalance in the next step? So, number 4, what should your verbal response be? Or what should your body language say, right? Brainstorm so you can exude confidence, right? And calmness and behavior that appropriately matches the scenario. Number 5 is plan for success, right? Some of these scenarios you're going to walk into, right? Customers not completing projects on time, someone dropped the ball, a sales prospect just creates chaos in meetings, right? How can we plan as much as possible so we can go into those scenarios and be successful? Who needs to be included if there is a major crisis? Who needs to know? Who's done this issue in the past and did it work? Let's steal everything they did and use it, right? No need to recreate the wheel. And then lastly, finish off strong, right? How are we going to solve this problem? How are we going to address this situation? And the key here is depending on what the scenario is, get the problem fixed first, right? Don't get into how it happened, why did it happen, into the history. Get the problem solved, and then let's work, into the lessons learned to figure out what we could have done differently last time, what happened, was there not enough support, etc. And using open-ended questions, especially to not instill like accusations or more fear, but getting the person to talk through it and using your questions to guide the conversation and getting them to recognize where the root cause is.
And just a hint on that one, because I have recently fell in love with open-ended questions because they are absolutely fantastic when you're trying to get people to solve problems on their own. Those are asking the questions of the who, the what, the why. It's not like, do you think? It should not be a binary answer on that. It cannot be a yes or no. So you can almost turn any closed question into an open-ended question by triggering those, or I say switching around those first opening lines into something that requires a response beyond a yes or no or black or white or A or B.
And it's not hard. It takes practice, right?
Oh,
Especially,
it does.
but it is possible, right, to get people to follow suit. So the first example here, so I'm going to walk you through just a couple scenarios. You received more in the workbook that you got. I didn't want to go through all of them, but this one is unfair blame. This scenario happened to me before. Let me just paint the stage. I was responsible for launching an IT system at a company where it was going to be used in over 300 locations. There was integrations into the accounting and finance software, into procurement and multiple arenas. And overall, the project went as well as possible. There were issues with the integration on the accounting side. We all knew it. We knew it before the project started, during the project, and when we agreed to launch. And so that team from that function was involved the whole time. And unfortunately, after we launched, countermeasures weren't getting implemented and things weren't getting fixed, right? So sure enough, a meeting with the high ups, including our president, had to happen to figure out why this wasn't getting across the finish line, right? And I feel like I probably could have done more communication and raised flags, but it is what it is. So we're in a meeting. I'm sitting across from our president and other leaders from my business unit, and there's a VP on the phone from the accounting and finance function. And we're starting to ask questions, and he literally throws me under the bus. And this is probably 11 or 12 years into my career. So if you can imagine, if you're hearing this story right now, I did not react very well. I'm pretty sure I stood up. I'm pretty sure I probably grunted or something. I probably raised my hands, pointed the phone, called him a liar, and who knows what else. Not a proud moment in my life at all. We learn, right? And it wasn't cool. However, when I left that meeting, I think I like blacked out because it was so awful. I'm like, wow. And like the president, we'll call him Joe for today, he was calm and collective. He knew that this individual on the phone was throwing me under the bus, and it probably was unnecessary because he's gotten the whole story. He asked some questions. We figured out some next steps. He didn't care, right? He wasn't looking at me. I wasn't going to get fired, right? And I'm like, huh, wow. And so having looked back at that scenario, I'm like, man, what would Joe do in these scenarios? And so as I went forward and I was in challenging situations or something came up and I didn't know how to address it, I literally would fall back on what would Joe do, right? How would he respond? How can I learn to be the mature leader, right? And I would say that was a pivotal moment for me, for sure, in regards to maturing in my career and my leadership journey. So the first example we have here is someone places blame on you in a meeting. Um, why is it? Well, gosh darn it, it looks and feels terrible, right? It's bad for my brand when someone's saying that it was my fault. And if people don't understand the whole story, they could actually think that, man, Jen, she stinks. I don't want her on my next project. And obviously my immediate reaction, not cool. In reality, I said that I should have handled it better. I should have stayed in the seat, confidence, and a pre-planned plan of action. So looking backwards on it, how could I have dealt with it? Well, maybe acknowledge the statement, right? And almost hit that person head on with what they're saying. Ask them, how did you get, walk me through, how it happened where these things weren't done.
A good
Again,
open question.
correct, right? Walk me through, how did you get there? Why are you saying that? Um, you know, um, and then of course in this scenario, because we want to solve the problem. All right, let's move forward and solve the problem because this is a huge issue, right? Other questions could be, if I did deserve the blame and I did drop the ball, right? Accept it. Move on. Let's fix the problem, right? Don't give a ton of excuses because no one wants to hear them. They just want to get to the solution. Um, Other things I could have done outside of the meeting is possibly called this individual afterwards and actually, met him eye to eye or at least on the phone and had an honest conversation, right? That would have been, I think,
Mm-hmm.
a huge bump to my maturity and my ability to handle this problem, right? And challenge this person with words over the phone in a polite way. I think looking back, I could have done so many different things, not what I did. So please learn from this scenario. Um, don't repeat what I did. And then the next example, I'm calling this Rise and Solve because at 2 companies ago, I was at a consumer packaging company and we were constantly launching new plastic bottles for Pepsi and Coke and Body Armor and, all their brands, and then small mom and pop places and small, more regional customers. And all the time, without fail, a vendor's shipment was stuck at the border. They didn't ship in full. We didn't get all the parts. A machine broke down. And it's always happened like right before we had to launch or qualify. And the filler, who's going to do the test fill of these plastic bottles, is ready to go. And if we stop that, that's a lot of money to go ahead and change over for, another product to go in. And sure enough, this always happened. And what was so cool is that my leader, his name was Steve, and when this would happen, he'd get an email, he'd get a phone call because he was in charge of all of operations. He would stand up and he would walk out of his office. He'd always stop at mine and say, "Hey, Jen, just saw that, so-and-so's, shipment stuck at the border, right? The molds aren't in yet." And I'm like, "Yep." He's like, "I'm going to go tell so-and-so, the general manager," just so he doesn't hear it from someone else, number one, and to let him know that we're going to solve this problem and we'll give you an update at the end of the day. And then he'd come back, go back to his office, he'd get on the phone, he'd assemble a team, we'd figure out what we could do. Can we pull in a different people? Can we make something overnight? Calling it a separate mold shop, all these things. And sure enough, the problems were always solved. Sometimes we missed customer expectation, but there was a proper, chain of command and decision point of when we were actually going to call the customer to let them know, versus waiting to say an hour before they were supposed to receive bottles. Um, it was fantastic. And this leader constantly planted questions in me and told me why he was doing certain things so I could learn the business and learn the company and learn the team. And pretty soon it was rubbing off on me. And I was asking the questions. I didn't even know, it just kind of happened. And he retired, which was a very sad day for all of us because he was just phenomenal. And it transpired from what would Joe do to what would Steve do, right? And our whole team did it. There was a crisis. We would sit and think, what would Steve do, right? And both from a professionalism standpoint, but also from the actions we would take to solve the problem. And so I won't walk you through the scenario, but that's exactly what it is, right? And if you're in a role where there's going to be scenarios like this, where there's extremely tight timelines, how do you have how do you mitigate your risk in advance and have those pre-planned activities ready? And again, just like the last scenario, this one, get the problem solved, and then let's go back and figure out root cause. I think I even had what would Steve do like in stickers on my phone.
I love it.
Yeah. Phenomenal. Like the confidence and the knowledge, it was so cool. Another example that we have here is a missed deadline, right? A team member, maybe one of your team members or someone on your team didn't finish work on time. It's a problem because the customer, internal or external, can't proceed with something, right? And it could give us a bad rating, or it could just show bad, or who knows, or if it's just a complete domino effect and everything turns into chaos, right? You're frustrated, right? Oh my God, this person missed it again. Oh, right? We can't do that in front of our people, right? So how do we have a calm demeanor, right? But a firm face, right? We have to solve this with some, with leadership attributes. Brainstorm with the individual. How do we get this done ASAP? Figure out when you need to call the customer, whomever it is, to kind of go over the fact that you might not get what you need when we promised, right? And you might not want to apologize. That's something I would do. Is that's me. But accept ownership, right? We messed up, and not placing blame on that person, right? It's my team. We all messed up. Accept ownership and move forward. And again, here's a fantastic time where you can ask the questions after you solve the problem. How did this happen? What else? Walk me through what things failed along the way. Or I don't know, Julie, what other questions? Help me with a better open-ended question to kind of with the lessons learned.
Oh, what did you learn throughout the process? What did you learn about yourself through the process?
Yeah.
If you could envision how it could work better next time, what would that look like?
Yep. What would be done differently?
Mm-hmm.
And then as you as a leader, right? What could I have done more to help out? Do I need to check in more? Do I need to give more resources? Who knows? Maybe this person doesn't have the full skill set to do whatever's being asked to perform, right? So lots of things to investigate. um, Sheer chaos, right? Raise your hand if you ever have sheer chaos. And then something else happens and it's just even worse. And you know what? It is what it is. And that it happens. So this case scenario is just things are going crazy already. And one more thing just popped up. Obviously, you're frustrated. Things aren't going to get done on time. You're probably going to go home and maybe yell at your kids, yell at a dog, right? You're taking that frustration home, right? Your team and your family are going to play off your energy here, right? So again, this is where a key one with your body language comes into play. How do you pull yourself together, right? Highly recommend taking 5 to 10 minutes. And if you haven't already documented everything that you need to handle and deal with, and start do it, delegate it, defer it, delete it, right? You need to do that. Otherwise, it's just going to be creating more chaos. It's going to roll into the weekend. It's going to, impact your life and probably your family and friends. Um, and you know what? In these scenarios, some things might not get done, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you call someone and say, hey, this isn't going to get done by tomorrow. Is it okay? Is next week okay? Lots of times it is okay, right? Or, oh, actually, I don't need it tomorrow. I need it in 2 weeks. Who knows? But again, talking to the person who you're trying to send the information to, asking for help, right? Um, Definitely ask for help, and then confirm priorities with your leader and the people around you, what actually has to be done first. something's going to fall. Make sure everyone is involved in the decision making so they know what it is. And then the last two examples we have here is your proud leader moment. Like, that's my baby, right? We want to be ready to recognize fantastic things when they happen, right? This plays into behavioral-based motivation, and I'm going to put a plug into a July 28th session where we go into how do we use people's behaviors to serve as motivation, both for improvement, but also reinforcing good stuff. So this example is someone handled a presentation like a champ, right? It's not a problem, right? This scenario is not a problem. But what's your immediate reaction, right? We want to go up and be ready to show our excitement and the fact that we're so happy for them that they just killed it. And be ready with the compliment. But key point, be ready with the behavior that they demonstrated. Like, man, you knocked that presentation out of the park. You spoke so clearly and smoothly and slow enough that everyone could understand, right?
Give
What
them specifics.
Yep. Give them specifics. Your body behavior. Or, hey, I know you practiced last night in front of a mirror for an hour. That clearly worked because you knew this stuff like the back of your hand, right? That specific behavior that they demonstrated or did, tell them that because that's going to be embedded in them like, oh, I need to do that again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And questions to ask. Well, hey, how did you prep? What did you do? Right? Walk me through that. Maybe it's a lesson learned that can be carried over to other people on the team. Or better yet, it can be a question asked in the next team meeting, right? So they're hearing it from the person who actually did the work, right? And we can share in that excitement. Another one here is a team member stepped up when a supplier dropped the ball, right? Because that never happens. And and again, it's not a problem scenario. And our immediate reaction definitely needs to be appreciative. We need to thank that person, especially when they stepped up and no one asked them to, right? They just stepped in, knew it was an issue, and knew they could help get it done, right? So be ready with a compliment. What did you do? Hey, thank you for taking initiative and not waiting for someone to tell you to do that. You owned it. You got it across the finish line. You solved the problems. You got the right resources involved. Who knows what it is? Because that resulted in success. The project was completed. Someone's happy, right? We're recognizing it and tying it to that behavior. And then obviously in the future, how do we prevent this? Knowing if someone or a supplier dropped the ball, right? So behavior-based motivation is so fascinating and so valuable. You do it with your kids, right? Thank you for going to the bathroom when you told me you had to. And, thank you for washing your hands after you went to the bathroom, right? We were tying it back to individual behaviors. And so next steps, right? So you have the handout. It's in Excel on purpose so you can actually type into it, modify it as you see fit, use it, brainstorm some of those crazy scenarios, brainstorm with your team members, your boss, maybe someone at home, knowing that you're dealing with some challenges, but also make sure to include the rewarding scenarios. Don't just think of the trouble ones or possible problems. Obviously positive or negative. Think about past experiences where you wish you would have maybe done something different, like my first scenario, or ones that you obviously left wishing you'd handled much differently. And when you're thinking about how it plays out, who do you admire? Who have you observed in meetings who's always cool, calm, collective, figures stuff out, asks good questions, is always professional, versus someone who you don't want to exude, someone who's on their phone all the time, who's banging walls and slamming doors, right? And maybe that's not your shtick. So we want to try and stay away from that. Thinking about past responses, what would you do differently? Fill out the form, modify it to fit your needs, what works for you, and then continue to learn, right? As leaders in any role, without teams, with teams, as individual contributors, as salespeople, anyone, continue to observe. Remember the stories to share because stories are a huge way to influence behavior and impact people's understandings. Ask for feedback. Maybe if you are a people leader, right? Maybe sit down with your team and go through some challenging scenarios and how people have reacted in the past and maybe how we should approach it in the future. And continue to change and evolve and grow.
And some of those best stories you can share, Jen, are the ones where you yourself as the leader can show some of that vulnerability. So, hey, this is what I've done in my past, just like your story. This is what I've done in my past. This is how I really royally screwed it up. but this is how I fixed it, and this is how I handled it next time. That you show, hey, not everybody's perfect. It's fine. Everyone can make a mistake. It's what you learn from it that
Yeah.
where you grow.
And maybe it can turn into like, what would Jen do?
There you go.
I'm kind of kidding. So do you like what you heard, right? If you like what you heard or you want something different, let us know. Again, Julie and I have vast experiences in over 20 years of our careers. Are you experiencing pain at work, right? Do you have teams or leaders that are flavor of the day people? Are you getting inconsistent results? Is there low motivation? Especially now in this unique environment, how to handle your day, or you can't formulate a plan that actually can stick and be implemented, contact us. Let your leaders know that we're available for customized solutions to meet your specific needs. And we're happy to meet you where you are in regards to maturity, size, function, and team.
That plant looks so sad, Jen.
I know I changed it to the sad plant. Present pain.
Let's make some happy plants.
Yeah, that's like
Some
my
happy plants.
yeah, yeah, it's like my house plant. So Amanda just mentioned talking about leaders getting 360 reviews. I I love a good 360, right? Especially when you can get people with good constructive information, taking it down to specific scenarios to help those individuals. Obviously, when people go through leadership programs, they're often asked to do 360s, right, or send them out to coworkers. Julie and I have done 360s. We've actually made them specifically for people to go out and get information. Fantastic opportunity to get real live information.
hmm they're really fantastic. I mean, I've had them done on myself. I've had them done on my leaders. I've participated in them. The one big caution I would give you on that is just make sure that your team is ready for it.
Hmm.
So think about the culture that you have, if they're ready for that 360 feedback.
Hmm.
I'd worked previously with a company where we started to do 360 feedback, and immediately the leader, as he started getting the feedback, was he spent the time trying to figure out who said exactly what. 3 different situations throughout my career, I've had that. And I had to point out to him, I'm like, you do realize you're doing exactly right now what people don't like about you. Like, this is the feedback that they're giving you.
Hmm.
And it took him like 3 weeks to digest it. And he came back to me and said, that conversation with you, it hurt me,
Hmm.
not because you were trying to hurt me, but it hurt me personally. And I knew I needed to grow, and I got stretched very uncomfortably, very quickly, but it was the kick in the butt that I needed to hear. So really think through the group that you're working with just to make sure like they're one ready for 360 feedback. If they're not, you've got to do a little bit of ground laying work ahead of time. I'd love to share experience with it. I know Jen's got experience with that too. So give us a call. We can certainly help out with that.
And, Julie mentioned the individual who's just trying to find who wrote what, but the people who are doing the reviews were scared as well,
hmm
right? So it wasn't just the person getting reviewed, it was the people putting the input in, like, oh my gosh, why am I being asked these questions?
Yeah.
So they told us they were ready for this, but in reality, after the fact, they weren't.
hmm
And it's also hard because I've had 360s done on me, and it's hard to read, scenarios where I didn't perform as well, or someone would have liked to seen something different. I am thankful that someone took the time to write that, right? Because
hmm
now I view that they had enough respect for me to actually contribute good information to help me change and improve. So, how do you spin that into a positive thought? They're not trying out to get me and point out all my
hmm
flaws, right? I'm going to take the side that, glass half full, that they're actually trying to help me here. And that's how you have to, view it in your head.
hmm
Steve has a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Question? Are we gonna, and we have time. We ended a little early as planned to do some open up ended questions,
Yeah.
or
Okay,
open up for questions.
good. Do you want me to read Steve's question?
Sure.
All right. So Steve wants to know, do you give the 360 out, or would you like your manager to provide to others for input?
Does this mean us giving the 360, or you, Steve, as the individual sending it out to people, or the manager sending it out to people to get input? Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. No, I see what you're saying there. So Steve answered, when employees give their 360 out, they only give it to people who give positive advice and no constructive criticism. Yeah. So this is where, whenever I have done it personally, what I like to do is they get to pick three, I get to pick three, and like their leader might get to pick three. So if I'm sitting in there, like from the HR perspective, it's a group effort of who they get to choose. So they can all pick some people from their certain comfort level of who they might want to be able to get. For me personally, I look at it as a challenge. Like, I'm going to go find that grumpy curmudgeon that I know is annoyed with me, and I want to know what they have to say because I want to understand what those perceptions are so that I can get better. So, Jen, you have anything to add on that one?
100%. Right. And I know, like, when it's a formal process, right, you get to pick some, you pick your peers, you pick so many people that might report to you,
Mm-hmm.
cross-functional teams, right, and looking at different functions. So 100%, Steve, we don't just want to give it to people. um, I mean, it make you feel good, but are you gonna, where's your leadership journey going from there?
Because it might make you feel bad, but it's not going to make you feel, or it's not going to make you any better for sure.
Right.
Great question.
It would reinforce the good stuff, but it
Yeah.
would change the others.
The other thing on that too, it just kind of reminded me here, on the 360, is whether or not to give the verbatim feedback out back to the leader. And I always err on the side of, it goes to a neutral third party who aggregates the themes and can pull some specific feedback out, like a couple words here and there. Otherwise, if people learn people's writing styles or words that they tend to use, then they start digging into like sentence structure and, oh, that person uses commas all the time, so this person must have said it. So I'm not a huge fan of giving the verbatim feedback back. I'd rather have a third party kind of look at it,
Hmm.
put the themes together, and then offer some advice.
Hmm. Yes. And the individual Julie mentioned was trying to piece through information that had been cut and pasted together. So
Oh my gosh.
it was a
Actually, that has happened to me 3 times in my life, Jen.
wow.
Yes,
I'm so sorry to hear that.
3 times.
Fantastic questions. We'll leave it open for maybe a couple more minutes to see if anyone has anything else. Um, this is definitely a fun topic. I love reliving some painfulness.
And
But
if there is not, we've got another webinar coming up in July here on Hoshin Connery and strategic planning. So feel free to head to our website, or the link will be in the email you get with the recording from today.
yes, we'll be sending out the PowerPoint. And I realized that I didn't cut and paste that in.
Jennifer.
Yes, so you'll get an email from us tonight or tomorrow morning with the recording, the handout again, and then also a PDF of the presentation. We also have a Spark series that we just launched yesterday with Ann Arbor Spark, and all on culture. And our next topic is actually all about the behavioral-based motivation. We're going to be using the scenario as well. In part of it, we'll be adding on so much more. So maybe we can put that in the email as well. Free about 2-hour session.
There you go.
So if there's nothing else, thanks to everyone who joined today. Thank you for everyone that added to the chat and giving us questions. We love feedback. You'll get a survey in the email asking how we did, the content, is it applicable, the delivery, etc. So again, honest feedback, please.
Got it. Thanks, everyone.